Mum, it's okay. You don't have to tell me if it's too painful. Nora shook her head, wiping away the tears. No, you deserve to know. I wish I had answers for you. I wish I could tell you who your father is, but I can't. All I know is that I love you more than anything in this world, and I've tried to give you the best life I could. Why was Cherry Smith wearing a cardboard box on her head? The entire class of 12-year-olds stared in disbelief as the teacher spoke. Class, I'd like to introduce our new student. Her name is Cherry. The class laughed uncontrollably. A girl, Bree, with blonde hair and a mean face spoke out. Why, she got a box on her head? Is she really ugly or something? The class laughed. That's not funny, said the teacher. Come on, Mrs. Franklin, Bree replied. You can't seriously think I'm the one with the problem. This girl's the weirdo. As the teacher watched the kids make fun of Cherry, she couldn't help wonder, where did this all start? After class, she took Cherry aside and got her to explain the full story. I was 7 years old and really liked a boy. I would see him every day and tell my friends how much I liked him. I dreamed about our wedding but was too shy to ask the boy out. The teacher listened as Cherry continued. One day while the boy was playing football, my friends convinced me to finally go and talk to him. I interrupted the football match. The boy I liked faced me, confused since we had never spoken. I like you, I said. Do you want to marry me? The teacher put her head in her hands, aware how hurtful the boy's response could be for a little girl. Cherry continued. The boy burst out laughing. Then everyone on the pitch pointed and laughed at me and called me ugly, including my own friends. It was traumatizing and I ran all the way home. I saw a pile of recycling on the street and grabbed this cardboard box. I've been wearing it ever since. Cherry finished telling her story for the teacher and went home alone. She walked in and found her mother, Nora, sitting in the kitchen. Cherry, still wearing her box, walked in and sat at the kitchen table. You think you could take off your box for me? Cherry just shook her head, no, as the box swiveled around. Nora continued, I know it's hard to believe, but I know exactly how you're feeling. I was also bullied terribly. There were many times I wished I had a box on my head too. Mom, kids are way worse today, trust me, you had it easy, Cherry replied. Nora wasn't going to argue, she just stared at Cherry, wondering what she did wrong as a single mother. If only things had been different. This is my fault, isn't it? Nora said. No, Mum, you did your best. Nora shook her head. My best wasn't good enough, ever since your twin brother was stolen at birth. If only I knew who the father was, I could try and track him down. You're doing this because you have a hole in your heart. A twin isn't supposed to be alone. Nora looked off. I hope one day you find him. Who was Cherry's father? Will she ever find her long-lost twin? That night, Cherry stayed up late writing her blog. She had first started it to find her long-lost twin brother. Her mother had always talked about how they were separated at birth and hoped one day they would all be together. She never found her brother, but over time, Cherry's blog had evolved into her nightly therapy, where she shared her deepest feelings with her online friends. Hey, ladybugs, today was really hard. I went to a new school and kids laughed at my cardboard box. I just wanted to disappear, but then I thought of you guys. Thanks for being there for me. One comment popped up immediately from Sunnyboy16. It said, I believe in you, Cherry. Your blog is my lifeline. It's so important to know other kids have the same worries as me. I have a big day tomorrow and it helps to know you're out there. Thanks for being you. Cherry was very grateful to read the comment. She thought of it as she drifted off to sleep. The next day, Cherry woke up and saw it was a sunny day. She looked out the window to enjoy the day, but instead, she found a sign on her lawn that said, Ugly Cherry lives here. She saw her mum run out and tear the sign up, but it was too late. Cherry put her box on her head and dragged herself to school, though she could hardly force herself to go in. Eventually, she walked through the yard and immediately was met with insults from bullies. Then, the coolest kid in school knocked on her cardboard box. Cherry stepped back, and then his friend tripped her right into a puddle. The cool kid walked up to Cherry and stood over her, holding a sports drink over her head. Show us your face or I pour this drink all over your head. The whole yard stopped to look. 3, 2, 1. The cool boys started to pour when a small boy in a motorcycle helmet pushed him away. The cool kid went flying back into his friends, knocking them down like bowling pins. They got up for revenge, but the bell rang and all the kids went inside. The cool kid yelled back at the helmet boy, "Who the hell are you?" The boy took off his helmet. He was about the same height as Cherry, with long hair covering most of his face. "I'm Pete, and you shouldn't pick on kids." "Who are you kidding? There's no Pete in this school," said the cool kid. "There is now. I'm new. I just moved to town," said Pete. "Oh, yeah. Well, Pete, I'll see you after school and welcome you with my fist." The cool kid and his friend laughed as they walked into class. Cherry was still lying on the ground, crying under her box. Pete wanted to help but didn't know what to say. "You shouldn't let them upset you. They're the ones with the problem." Cherry couldn't bear for anyone to see her in such distress and ran off as fast as she could. Cherry spent the rest of the day alone, in the corner of the class, silent. At lunchtime, Cherry was eating by herself when she saw a crowd watching the cool kid beat up Pete. She could only watch helplessly as Pete was pommeled. Then something inside her snapped and Cherry yelled, "Stop hurting him!" Everyone stopped and laughed, looking at Cherry and her cardboard box running over. "Okay," said the cool kid. "I'll stop if you take off your box. We have a deal?" There was a hush in the air. Would she do it? When Cherry said nothing, the boy shrugged and loaded up a punch. "Wait," Cherry yelled. "I'll do it, just stop." The whole crowd turned, with all eyes on her. Cherry turned away from everyone and lifted the box from her head. She was getting ready to turn around and reveal her face when Pete jumped up in between the crowd and her. "She shouldn't have to take off her box for you or anyone. It's her decision." Then Pete threw a handful of dirt at the cool kid and shouted, "Run!" Cherry ran off and Pete followed her out of the schoolyard. The two of them ran until they couldn't stand anymore. 30 minutes later, they found themselves in a park under a tree. Safe for now. "Thanks for defending me," said Pete. "Thanks for helping me too. That was really brave of you," said Cherry. "I meant what I said. You shouldn't have to take off your box unless you want to." Pete played with his long hair. Cherry noticed and said, "You cover your face too, with your hair. We're not that different, are we?" "No, we're both pretty shy, huh? But for the record, I wish I didn't feel like I had to cover myself up. And I bet you feel the same way," said Pete. Cherry nodded. "I'm afraid of what people will say. Will they just call me ugly again? Laugh at me? Could I take it?" "You have nothing to worry about, Cherry. I'm sure you're very pretty, and the important thing is that you live your life your way. Don't let other people tell you how to live." "I like that. Maybe we both should take that advice." "Maybe," said Pete, before checking his watch and running off. "Gotta go. If I'm late, my dad will kill me. See you tomorrow." That night, Cherry came home late to see her mother asleep on the couch. Her diary was open on her chest. She always read her diary when she was missing her twin brother and thinking about who their father was. Cherry pulled the blanket over her mother before going upstairs. At her desk, she hesitated before she wrote in her blog, "I had a really big day today. I'm at a crossroads. Should I finally show my face? What do you guys think?" A wave of smiley faces and clapping hand emojis popped up. Then there was a message from Sunnyboy16. It said, "I'm so proud of you, Cherry. You've inspired me to do the same thing. Keep being you." That made Cherry smile wide. She looked at her box on her desk. Then she looked at the scissors. With a determined look, she started cutting up the box and throwing it all over the floor. The next morning at school, Cherry arrived early and nervous. She stood outside for a long time when she saw the back of a boy who looked familiar. She furrowed her brow, and then when he turned around, Cherry was stunned. It was Pete with short hair. They looked at each other like they'd seen a ghost. "What made you take your box off?" said Pete. "You did, and also this kid on my blog. He really inspired me. He said I should keep being me." "Was it Sunnyboy16? "Yes!" exclaimed Cherry. "That's me. I love your blog," said Pete. "Seriously, that's amazing. This must be meant to be." They hugged each other. Then after the initial shock of their discovery, Pete and Cherry started to see the details in each other's faces for the first time. With her box gone and his short haircut, Pete and Cherry could see they were in fact twins. There was no denying it. "Are you my brother?" said Cherry. "Are you my sister?" said Pete. This was truly a miracle. Cherry leaned in closer, studying Pete's face, noticing every small detail that matched her own. How was this possible? An uneasy silence fell between them as they both tried to process what was happening. Cherry's thoughts turned to the stories her mother, Nora Smith, had told her about a lost brother. Could it be? She felt a surge of hope mixed with fear. "Pete," Cherry began cautiously, "have you ever heard anything about having a sister, or about being separated from your family?" Pete looked puzzled. "No, I've lived with my dad for as long as I can remember. He never said anything about a sister. He really discourages me from talking about family." "And what about your mum?" Cherry asked, her curiosity rising. Pete shook his head. "I don't have a mum. Never seen her." "Your dad never told you about her?" Cherry pressed on. Pete's heart sank when he heard the question. He replied in a soft voice, "He never talks about her and warned everyone not to say a word about her. I think he hates her." Cherry couldn't help thinking, why would Pete's dad hate my mum? Cherry's heart sank a little, but she sat down beside Pete and continued, "My mum told me a story about my lost brother. She said we came to this city to find him. He was stolen at birth and has been searching ever since. We both have." Pete's eyes were filled with tears as he looked at Cherry. "Is this all true? Will I finally have a mum?" Cherry nodded, her own emotions welling up. "Yes, Pete, you deserve to have a mum's love. And I've never had a dad's love. I want that too." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their discovery sinking in. "What are we going to do?" Pete asked, his voice tinged with both hope and fear. Cherry thought for a moment. "We need to bring our parents together, but my dad will hate it," Pete interjected, his voice dropping. "He'd never want to meet your mum." Cherry sighed. "And my mum might get angry if she finds out about all this. She's been through so much already." The two of them sat quietly, the enormity of the situation pressing down on them. Finally, Pete spoke up again. "Since we look so similar, why don't we exchange places?" Cherry's eyes widened at the idea. "Exchange places? You mean like switching lives for a bit?" Pete nodded eagerly. "Yes, I could spend time with your mum and you could spend time with my dad. We could then try to find a way to bring them together." Cherry thought about it for a moment, then a smile spread across her face. "Yeah, this way I can try to understand your dad and find a way to bring him close to Mum. Why didn't I think of this? It's a great idea." Pete nodded again, his excitement growing. "Exactly." Cherry paused, a thought crossing her mind. "Wait a second, who is your dad?" "Justin Hunt," Pete replied. Cherry's eyes widened in shock. "Justin Hunt? The billionaire Justin Hunt?" Pete nodded, looking a bit sheepish. "Yeah, that's him." Cherry took a deep breath, trying to process this new information. "Wow, that makes things a bit more difficult, but I'll try my best. I have to." They spent the next hour planning every detail. Cherry suggested that they make the switch at the upcoming school play on Friday. "After the play, we'll go with each other's parents," she explained. "I'll go with your dad and you'll go with my mum. We'll switch back on Monday after school." Pete agreed, excitement and nerves bubbling inside him. "Okay, I'll take part in the play and after it's over we'll make the switch." Cherry smiled, feeling a mix of anxiety and determination. "All right, let's do this." The night of the school play arrived. Nora was very excited to see her daughter perform. She had always wanted to be a performer, but getting pregnant as a teenager meant she had to give up on those dreams, especially as a single mother. "If only I knew who Cherry's father was," she thought. "It would be easier for Cherry to follow her dreams. I'm just scraping by as it is, and to have a brother to support her would go such a long way. I do hope I find him someday. But who is he?" The play had been a whirlwind of excitement and nerves, but Cherry and Pete nailed their parts. They met backstage before the big swap. "Good luck," Cherry whispered to Pete, her heart racing with a mix of fear and excitement. "You too," Pete replied, eyes wide but determined. With a final nod, they went their separate ways, each stepping into a new world. Will Pete and Cherry's plan succeed? Will their parents find out? Pete's father, Justin Hunt, a tall, imposing man with sharp features, approached Cherry, mistaking her for Pete. "Ready to go, son?" he asked, his voice cool and authoritative. Cherry nodded, her stomach churning with nerves. She followed Justin outside to a sleek black Bentley. Justin opened the door for her, and she slid into the luxurious leather seat, eyes wide with amazement. As Justin got into the driver's seat, Cherry glanced around, marveling at the car's pristine interior. "Can we stop for ice cream?" Cherry asked tentatively, her voice small. Justin's expression hardened. "You should avoid junk food, Pete. It's not good for you," he said firmly. Cherry shook her head. No. Then she bit her lip with disappointment. The rest of the drive to Justin's mansion was a silent one. When they arrived, Cherry's jaw dropped. The mansion was enormous, a sprawling estate with perfectly manicured lawns, towering columns, and a grand staircase leading up to an intricately designed front door. Justin led her in, and Cherry was immediately struck by the extravagance of the interior. The foyer alone was larger than her entire apartment. A grand staircase with a polished mahogany banister curved gracefully to the upper floors. "Go to the study. Your tutor is waiting," Justin instructed, his voice echoing slightly in the vast space. "I have an important call to make, but I'll join you shortly to check on your progress." Cherry nodded, her heart racing as she navigated through the house. Every room she passed was more luxurious than the last. Finally, she reached the study. It was a warm, inviting room with walls lined with bookshelves filled with leather-bound volumes. The room smelled faintly of old books and polished wood, a comforting scent that made Cherry feel a bit more at ease. The tutor was a woman in her early 30s. As soon as her eyes fell on Cherry, she snapped, greeted Cherry with a smile. "Good evening, Pete. Ready for your lesson?" Yes," Cherry replied, trying to sound confident. Cherry sank into the leather chair across from the desk, her eyes roving around the room. The tutor started sifting through Pete's assignments, but Cherry's mind was miles away. She couldn't shake the thought of how starkly different her life was from Pete's. The luxury, the opulence, everything was so foreign to her. As she pretended to listen to the tutor's explanations, her mind was already at work. She needed to understand Justin Hunt and find a way to bring him closer to her mother, Nora. The realization that her mother's long-lost son had been living such a privileged life only fueled her determination to make her plan a success. Cherry's daydream was broken by the teacher's vicious words. "Why haven't you finished your homework, Pete?" Cherry stared at the tutor blankly as she continued. "Judging from how stupid you are, you must take after your mother." "Oh, wait, that isn't quite right, because you're a little without a mother, aren't you? Give me your hand. I'm going to teach you a good lesson today." Cherry stared at her, outraged. How dare she insult my mum like that? Has she been hitting Pete? She stood as tall as she could make herself and put her hands on her hips. She was about to hurl insults back at the tutor when the door opened. She turned to see her handsome father striding in. Cherry immediately forgot what had just happened. She leapt toward him as if she had wings, but the tutor caught her by the arm. Justin took off his jacket and asked, "How's Pete doing lately?" The tutor sighed. "He's not done his homework again. He's so stubborn. He just refuses to listen to me. He's making no progress and is lagging a long way behind his cousins." Justin frowned at her troubling report. Although his son's IQ was excellent, he always had trouble expressing himself. He walked up to Cherry, squatted down to face her, and asked patiently, "Why didn't you do your homework?" Cherry was so distracted by how handsome her daddy looked up close that she didn't say anything. Seeing the silent child, the tutor scoffed inwardly. She was more convinced than ever that he would never cry, make a fuss or complain. Relieved, she started to spin more lies. "I'm really at my wit's end, Mr. Hunt. Discipline and scolding don't work on him. Your only option now is to employ special methods for his education." This caught Cherry's attention. What does she mean, special methods? Justin's expression instantly darkened. He retorted fiercely, "Pete is fine. He doesn't need to attend a school for children with special needs. If you can't teach him, then I'll find someone else, Lawrence." "Yes, sir. Settle her wages immediately," Justin ordered. "She doesn't need to come in anymore." The tutor was shocked by his sudden anger. As Cherry watched the tutor walk toward the door, Cherry's quick mind sprang into action. Her big eyes stared up at Justin innocently and she asked him, "Daddy, am I a little without a mother?" Justin was taken aback. His son rarely spoke this much, and he couldn't understand where these troubling questions were coming from. He restrained his fury and asked gently, "Who told you these things, Pete?" Cherry stretched out her arm and pointed her chubby little finger at the door. "She did." Lawrence grabbed the tutor and pushed her firmly out into the hallway. Lawrence was an efficient man. He managed to get the truth out of the tutor quickly. He came back in and explained what she'd told him. "It's your uncle and his family that bribed her. They wanted to make Pete into a stubborn, problematic child so that their own children could take over your family business." Justin was ridden with guilt. He walked to the room where Cherry was playing. He saw she was playing with dolls and pretending that they were one big, happy family. "I love you, Mummy. I love you, Daddy," she said to her toys. Justin walked over and sat beside Cherry. "It's all my fault," he said in a soft tone. "I'm sorry, Pete. You're not a little without a mother. In fact, you do have a mother. It's just..." He paused. "It's complicated." Cherry stretched out her little arms and hugged him. "Everything will be fine, Daddy. Thanks for saying sorry." Justin sighed. Then he said seriously, "We won't engage any more tutors. I'll be teaching you from now on. We'll get started right now. How about that?" Cherry was taken aback. She hated having to do homework. "Help, Pete!" she screamed in her head. When Nora returned with Pete to her home, she found the child she thought to be her daughter unusually calm and composed. She walked over and patted the child on top of her head. "You're so well behaved today, sweetheart." The soft lips pressing against his skin caused Pete to freeze. He was still not used to the closeness. Mummy's Cherry had no choice but to start tackling her assignments. She bit her pen and stared at the maths textbook. Her face wrinkled as she tried to make sense of it. She couldn't understand the questions in the book at all. Justin was sitting next to her. It had been 6 months since he'd last tutored his son. He pointed at the simplest question on the page and asked, "Do you know how to solve this?" Cherry's big eyes were completely blank. Justin flipped back through the book to where they'd been up to 6 months ago. "What about this one?" Cherry shook her head firmly. Justin took a deep breath and told himself not to get mad. He decided to try again. "Who invented the light bulb?" Full of confidence, Cherry answered, "Idris Elba." Justin looked at his son, who was usually so solemn. He was so much more lively and animated today. But he couldn't help yelling sternly, "Peter Hunt!" Cherry looked up, scared. Justin reined his temper in. The tutor was the one who taught the child all the wrong information, so what good was losing his temper with Pete gonna do? He said glumly. Let's continue tomorrow." Cherry heaved a huge sigh of relief. Justin rubbed his temples as he watched Cherry walk off to the other end of the room. Lawrence entered the room when Justin asked, "Have you noticed Pete being different today?" The abuse from the tutor must have been going on for a long time, but his son had never once mentioned anything. Yet today, not only had he spoken up, but he also seemed to have become a lot more cheerful. What was going on? Lawrence was about to say something, but Justin noticed that the child had fallen asleep on the sofa. He gestured to Lawrence to keep quiet. He walked over and picked up Cherry, intending to carry her into the bedroom. Cherry sleepily placed her arms around his neck and said, "Mummy, I found my twin brother. He looks just like me." Justin paused and frowned. He stared at the young child in his arms. Pete rarely asked about his mother. Justin had thought he wasn't curious about her. He felt a mixture of complex emotions arising. He carried Cherry into the bedroom and tucked her in. Cherry, pretending to be Pete, found herself in the grand dining room the next morning, the air filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and baked pastries. The opulence of the room was still overwhelming, with its high ceilings, crystal chandeliers, and a large mahogany table set for breakfast. She glanced nervously at Justin, who was engrossed in reading the morning paper. Taking a deep breath, Cherry decided to probe gently. "Daddy," she started, her voice tentative. "I've been thinking about about my mother." The change in Justin's demeanor was immediate. His expression hardened, and he put down the newspaper with a sigh. "Pete, we've discussed this before. Did you forget the rule? No one in this house should talk about that woman." Cherry felt a pang of anxiety but pressed on. "I know, but it's just that sometimes I wonder. I feel like there's a part of my life that's missing. Justin interrupted, his tone stern but concerned. "Pete, is something bothering you? Are you feeling that I'm not paying enough attention to you? Do you feel unloved?" Cherry swallowed hard, trying to navigate the delicate situation. "No, it's not that. You've been great, Dad. It's just I don't even know anything about my mum. Then I have these dreams where I have a twin sister." Justin looked as concerned as ever, but he swallowed hard and calmed down, clearly troubled. "Pete, there are some things that are better left undiscussed. It's better for you not to dwell on this." Cherry nodded, realizing that pushing further might only make things worse. She would have to find another way to get the answers she needed. Meanwhile, Pete, disguised as Cherry, was having breakfast with Nora in their modest kitchen. The contrast between this and the opulence of Justin's mansion was stark. The kitchen was small but cozy, filled with the warmth of home-cooked meals and the love of a caring mother. Pete took a deep breath, trying to muster the courage to ask the question that had been on his mind since he met Cherry. "Mom," he began softly, "can I ask you something?" Nora looked up from her coffee, her eyes kind and attentive. "Of course, sweetie, what is it?" Pete hesitated before saying, "I was wondering about my dad. Who is he? What happened to him?" Nora's face went pale and she seemed to struggle for words. The memories of the past came rushing back to her, and she could feel tears welling up in her eyes. "Cherry, I don't know how to explain this to you," she stuttered. Nora remembered the shock, the fear, and the overwhelming sense of betrayal she felt when she discovered she was pregnant. She was young and hopeful, about to be married to Anthony Gray. But her world was turned upside down when she fainted one day and learned she was pregnant. The doctors told her the news, and she felt her world collapse around her. She had been a virgin, and the pregnancy was a mystery that filled her with dread and confusion. Her father, Henry Smith, had always been harsh and unloving. He saw her as an embarrassment, a burden on the family. When the pregnancy was discovered, Henry's reaction was brutal. He demanded to know who the father was, but Nora had no answers to give him. Pete could see the tears starting to form in Nora's eyes, and it broke his heart. He wanted to comfort her but didn't know how. "Mum, it's okay. You don't have to tell me if it's too painful." Nora shook her head, wiping away the tears. "No, you deserve to know. I wish I had answers for you. I wish I could tell you who your father is, but I can't. All I know is that I love you more than anything in this world, and I've tried to give you the best life I could." Pete felt a surge of affection for Nora, understanding the immense pain and sacrifice she had endured. "I love you too, Mum. You're the best." Nora smiled weakly, her heart heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. "Thank you, Cherry. Now why don't you go play your game? I have some work to do." Pete nodded, sensing that Nora needed some time alone. As he left the kitchen, he couldn't shake the feeling of sorrow and confusion that lingered in the air. Pete, still adjusting to his new role as Cherry, sat in what was supposed to be his room. Feeling overwhelmed, he picked up the iPad and went to Cherry's blog, where they could leave each other direct messages. As soon as he logged in, he saw Cherry's avatar online. He quickly connected with her. "Cherry, how's it going there?" Pete typed eagerly. Cherry's reply came almost immediately. "Hi, Pete, it's been interesting. I tried asking your dad about my mum, but he shut down the conversation pretty quickly. He said they have a rule not to talk about her." Pete felt a pang of disappointment but wasn't surprised. "Same here. I asked Mum about my dad and she got really emotional. She didn't give me any straight answers either. It's like they are hiding a huge secret." "Yeah, I feel it too. There's something off about this whole situation. Like there's more to the story that we're not getting," wrote Cherry. Pete wrote back, "So what do we do now? It's not going to be easy to bring them together." "We might need a new plan," Cherry typed, her words carrying a hint of seriousness. Pete was intrigued. "What are you thinking?" Cherry's reply was enthusiastic. "I just might have the perfect plan, but you'll have to wait until Monday at school for the details." Pete groaned playfully. "Come on, Cherry, tell me now." "Patience, Pete. Trust me, it'll be worth the wait," Cherry replied with a winking emoji. Monday finally arrived, and Pete and Cherry met in their usual spot at school, their excitement barely contained. Cherry wasted no time in explaining her new plan. "Okay, so here's the plan," she began, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "We need to get our parents to the school together, and the best way to do that is to get into trouble." Pete looked skeptical. "How are we going to make that happen?" Cherry grinned mischievously. "We're going to have a fight." Pete's eyes widened in surprise. "A fight? Are you serious?" "Yes," Cherry confirmed. "If we make a big enough scene, Miss Morris will have no choice but to call our parents. And once they're here, we'll figure out a way to make them talk." Pete thought about it for a moment, then nodded slowly. "It's risky, but it might just work. How do we make sure it's convincing enough?" Cherry leaned in, lowering her voice. "We need to make it look real. We'll start arguing about something trivial and then let it escalate. Just follow my lead." Pete still seemed unsure. "But what if Miss Morris doesn't buy it? What if we get into serious trouble?" Cherry shrugged. "We won't get into too much trouble. We just need to make enough of a scene to get their attention. Trust me, Pete, we can do this." Pete sighed, but nodded. "Okay, Cherry, I trust you. But what should we argue about?" Cherry thought for a moment. "That's a good question. How about we fight about taking stuff without asking?" Pete raised an eyebrow. "You mean like, why did you take my favorite book without asking, or something like that?" Cherry nodded. "Exactly. We can make it really dramatic. Just follow my lead and we'll be fine." Pete took a deep breath, trying to calm his nerves. "All right, let's do this." They spent the rest of the morning rehearsing their argument, making sure they knew their lines and reactions. As lunch break approached, they both felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. During lunch break, Pete and Cherry put their plan into action. They started with an argument in the hallway, making sure they were in a spot where teachers could see them. "Cherry, you can't just take my crayons!" Pete shouted, his voice high-pitched and angry. "Well, how would I know they are yours? You just leave them all over the place. They are mine now." Cherry shot back, crossing her arms. Pete stomped his foot. "That's not fair! You can't take my stuff! Give it back now!" Cherry rolled her eyes dramatically. "Oh, come on! It's just crayons! Stop being such a baby!" Their argument quickly attracted a crowd of curious students, their laughter and whispers adding to the chaos. The tension between Pete and Cherry was rising, and their faces were flushed with anger. Pete clenched his fists and took a step closer. "You're just so mean!" Cherry stepped closer too, her voice louder. "Mean? At least I know how to take care of my things. You just lose everything. The crowd of students started to buzz with excitement. The fight was becoming the highlight of their day. The noise attracted the attention of Miss Morris, who appeared at the end of the hallway, her face stern. "What's going on here?" she roared, her voice cutting through the chaos. Cherry and Pete didn't break character, continuing their shouting match. "You never listen to anyone," Pete yelled, his face red with fake anger. "Maybe because you never say anything nice," Cherry retorted, her hands on her hips. As the argument escalated, Cherry suddenly reached out and pulled Pete's hair. "Ow! Let go!" Pete yelled, swatting at her hand. "You let go first!" Cherry shouted back, her grip tightening. Pete then pushed Cherry. Miss Morris's patience snapped. She marched over and pulled the two apart, her face red with anger. "That's enough! Both of you to the head teacher's office, now!" As they walked to the head teacher's office, Pete and Cherry exchanged a quick, triumphant glance. Their plan was working. In the head teacher's office, Miss Morris sat them down and glared at them. "This behavior is unacceptable. I've had enough of your disruptions. I'm calling your parents right now." Pete and Cherry sat quietly, trying not to smile as Miss Morris made the calls. The room was filled with a tense silence, the gravity of the situation sinking in. Miss Morris finished the calls and turned back to the two of them. "Your parents will be here shortly. In the meantime, I want you to sit here and think about your actions." Pete and Cherry nodded calmly, but inside they were buzzing with anticipation. They exchanged another quick glance, knowing that their plan was moving forward exactly as they had hoped. Nora was the first to arrive at the door to the head teacher's office, anxiety gnawing at her stomach as she peered through the small window of the door. What she saw on the other side made her gasp in disbelief. There in the room were two figures who seemed identical, two Cherries, but one of them, to Nora's astonishment, looked like a boy. The shock hit her like a physical blow, and for an instant, time seemed to freeze around her. Could this be? Were they my twins the whole time? "What did you do now?" A shocked male voice entered the room and then stopped immediately at the sight of the twins. It was Justin. Justin and Nora turned to each other, staring like their world had just imploded. For Nora, painful memories flooded back. Years ago, in the dimly lit hospital room, chaos had erupted. Nora, weak from childbirth, had barely been able to comprehend what was happening. She remembered the desperate struggle, reaching out for her newborn twins as her father Henry tried to brutally snatch her twins from her. Nora had held on to Cherry, but Henry took her baby boy away from her grasp. "Give me my son back. Where are you taking my son? These children deserve to die," Henry raged. Nora's voice had cracked with anguish, tears streaming down her cheeks as she tried to follow, her body betraying her in its weakened state. Henry had vanished through the hospital doors, the boy crying in his arms, leaving Nora on the cold floor, clutching a newborn Cherry tightly to her chest. She felt like a part of her was being snatched from her, torn away. Never in her wildest dreams had she imagined that she would have these kids. She remembered the day she had fainted in class. It had been an ordinary day, the classroom buzzing with the hum of teenage chatter. Nora sat at her desk, staring blankly at her textbook, when a wave of dizziness washed over her. She tried to steady herself, gripping the edge of her desk, but her vision darkened and the world spun out of control. When she woke up in the hospital, the sterile smell of antiseptic filled her nostrils. Confusion gripped her as the doctor stood by her bedside, his expression a mix of concern and excitement. "Congratulations, you're pregnant," he had said, his voice firm yet gentle. The words hung in the air, impossible to comprehend. Nora's mind reeled. "But how? I'm a virgin," she whispered, her voice trembling with shock. She had never been with anyone, never even kissed a boy. The doctor's gaze didn't waver, and he repeated the impossible truth, his tone unwavering. "Not just pregnant, Nora. You're having twins." How did Nora get pregnant? How did Justin get custody of Pete? Will Cherry and Pete's plan work, or will they be separated again?
To listen to the full audio series, install the Pocket FM app now.